Good evening. My name is Salud, and tonight I'm sharing an old story I've written with you. This was a gift I'd written for a Secret Santa exchange among other writers. The recipient I was given asked for a story that had a dog and a theme about the passage of time. This story is special to me because I rarely write male protagonists. It was well received by the recipient, and I hope you like it as well. Please like this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to be notified when I have a new story for you. Now, let's begin. The door clicked shut behind me, and I jumped off the front step, careful not to trip over the garbage bins that Dad had left out. I heard the sound of kids screaming as the sun began to sink low in the sky, casting an orange light across the apartment buildings on my block. A red ball rolled in front of my feet, and I kicked it back, trying to ignore the lump in my throat as the kids took it and started playing again. You're it now. Be the goalie. No, you. I did it yesterday. We used to play that game all the time. Dust kicked up from the street as the vendors unfolded their stall tables, laying out firecrackers, paper, and markers. I smelt fried dough wafting through the air. Soon the street would look like a market, filled with couples and families. Keith would go wild for this stuff. 28 years old, and he'd duck and weave through the crowds like a treasure hunter, sticking his hand up and jumping when he found the best paper. "Bro," he'd say, "this one is hand-painted. This is it. This is the one. We'll take two. Do you have candles?" Last year he found dinosaurs and shook the vendor's hand, shouting how he'd outdone himself and these would be the best lanterns ever. Dinosaurs stick out, man. Everyone else is floating up cherry blossoms and trees and whatever. Nah, we got dinos. Stegosaurus and dry beer. Come on, let's write something cool for our moms. I would always shake my head and slide a tip to the vendors, my quiet apology for Keith's enthusiasm. He wouldn't have just kicked the ball back. He would have joined in, made new friends. Shoving my hands in my pockets, I turned a corner into the alley, away from the market stalls and slowly dying summer light. I didn't want to look at the paper for sale. Then I heard a yelp from behind two overturned garbage bins. For a second, I thought it was a kid, someone who tripped or hurt themselves. I crept closer, holding my hand out. A giant golden Labrador came pounding up to me, tongue lolling out of its mouth like a trailing red kite. His paws hit my chest and I stumbled backward, windmilling my arms to stay upright. Hey, easy. I knelt down, bringing him to eye level with me. He was dirty and thin, with a little scratch on his cheek. I rubbed at it with my shirt cuff, frowning. There was no collar. I'd have to take him to the vet and check for a microchip later. The dog licked my cheek, looking at me like we were old friends. When I went to walk away, he followed, tail wagging. The first lanterns were drifting up to the sky, so I stared at my feet, walking towards the smell of donuts. I saw fuzzy yellow paws beside my sneakers, and the knot in my throat loosened. He wolfed down the donuts I bought like they were the first thing he'd ever eaten, and looked at me like I was the very best person he'd ever met. Braver for the dog's affection, I bought some plain paper and markers. Against my better judgment, tears stung my eyes as we walked down to the docks, and I thought about what I would write to Keith. The medical examiner said he'd have better odds of winning the lottery. A brain aneurysm at his age was unheard of. But he didn't feel any pain. His cats didn't eat him either. He loved to joke about that. I sat down with my new friend, leaving a reminder in my phone to take him to the vet tomorrow. My fingers shook as I folded my paper lantern. Keith used to do it while I drained the last of my beer. It was his favorite part. This used to be a way for the village to let their neighbors know that they were safe from the plague. But I guess it was a lot of fun, so they kept with it. And now we say the lanterns are letters to heaven. I know, Keith. But isn't it cool? I look forward to this all year. Even if it winds up in a ditch or whatever, I got to tell my mom how I'm doing. Don't look at my message. It's personal, okay? It felt more like I was humoring Keith rather than talking with my mom. They'd been friends, introducing Keith and I when we were still in diapers. My fingers fumbled folding the lantern. They were shaking. The lab rested his head on my leg, letting out a supportive whine. I released a deep, shuddering breath. The kind of noise I'd be ashamed of under any other circumstances. The dog was grounding me, reminding me to just be here at the docks rather than in my own head. Missing Keith. Another breath. This one less shaky. I focused on the feeling of the paper under the pads of my fingers. The dog beside me, looking up at me like I was his savior. And I finished it. It wasn't neat like Keith's, but a small, tiny voice inside me said maybe he'd recognize it. I uncapped my pen and I wrote, I miss you. No beer this year. It doesn't taste the same now. I got a dog. Then I signed my name, lit the candle, and let the lantern soar up and up and up. The end. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Keith was the name of someone very important to me who died many years ago, and I found this story very cathartic to write. I hope it was able to make you feel something as well, or at least help you sleep. You're working very hard, so please be gentle with yourself. Good night. Thank you for sharing your time with me.